everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, hello, my name is Zara and I'm a registered nurse working in London, and I make videos about nursing life here in the UK. In this video, I will be sharing with you guys things I wish I knew before I started working in the intensive care unit. I'm going to be sharing the truth. As always, I will not hold back. Now, let's put everything into context. Let's set the timer. In 2020, I was working as a Band 5 surgical staff nurse in a busy non-elective surgical ward. Come March 2020, I was redeployed alongside my nursing colleagues to intensive care unit following the increased need for critical care nurses to look after COVID patients. I spent 3 months there starting from scratch with zero critical care experience. I learned a lot, but I was also happy to kind of finish my redeployment time and move on. Until January 2021, I was redeployed again to the same intensive care unit looking after COVID patients, but it was a little bit different this time. This time I had experience, I knew the team, and might sound a bit strange, very much more aware of how COVID is and the impacts that it had on patients. I was taking on my own patients the second time, and it was tough, guys, it was tough. So yes, yep, that is me. I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit mad. 3 months last year, 3 months this year, both at the peak of COVID. It's a bit unexpected. So I'm gonna keep it real and let's share it all with you guys. Now I do want to make a little bit of a disclaimer. I joined ICU when COVID was at its peak. So I am speaking as someone who's seen ICU pretty much at its most stretched, at its most overworked, at its most understaffed. My unit went from an 8-bedded ICU to a 20+ bedded ICU in a space of a very short time. So I am going to speak with a bit of caution when I do share these things, because I'm speaking from someone with a little bit of a different experience. So I just want to make that point before I start, because I think that's important. Intensive care unit both feels and looks different. The bedsides have a different layout. Generally, they're quite bigger. There are monitors pretty much at every bedside. And if a patient is very sick, then they will most likely be on a number of different infusions. The ways of practice is even different. So for example, in a ward sense, you will do all your medication preparations in a treatment room. However, in ICU, because it's one-to-one care, you do all of your medication preparations at the bedside. I was a bit confused when I used to see the nurses preparing IVs at the bedside. I was like, do I take my tray to the treatment room? They're like, you need to stay here. You need to stay here at the bedside and watch your patient whilst you're preparing and doing everything else. But I think the biggest challenge of them all was not being able to speak to some of my patients. I am quite chatty. Okay, I'm very chatty. And some of my favorite things about patient care is actually speaking to my patients, understanding their personalities, you know, developing like a therapeutic, professional relationship. In intensive care unit, you may meet a patient for the first time at the bedside and they are completely sedated and ventilated as well. And we're encouraged to still speak to patients even though they can't respond back. So you would still introduce yourself saying, hi, my name is Zara and I'm the staff nurse looking after you. But I struggled to do that when someone couldn't respond back to me. Over time, I did build that skill, that communication thing, and I kind of got over it as well. And it just became part of the care. Just like with anything, over time you just need to keep developing and it will get easier. The standing. I really didn't like the standing in ICU. The nature of ICU, where you are at the patient's bedside, it's one-to-one care, comparatively to a ward where you are constantly moving around. Whereas ICU, you know, things are sometimes brought to you, or you would get all of your things in the morning and then bring them to your bedside so you don't move around, because you have to watch the monitors, you have to watch your patient. You are there, you're fixated at one point. So I wanted to know the secret. How do these ICU nurses do it? I cannot be the only one. I even felt I was being a bit of a diva about it because really we're struggling. And then I found out everyone is wearing compression socks without fail. One nurse pulled me to the side and was like, Zara, why haven't you got these socks already? I was just in shock. As soon as I came home, I went on Amazon, I purchased the most fabulous compression socks I could find. That's probably been one of the best investments I made because it helped. It really did help. I also mentioned this in my nursing favorite favorites video, so if you haven't seen that already, do check it out, and I go into a little bit more detail about it. So yeah, I wish I had known the physical demands of working in ICU, but it was something that was fixable. Compression socks to the rescue. So in the UK, all nurses have to pass the medicines management module before they're able to administer medications. During studying, you learn a whole array of medications. The BNF becomes our best friend. In ICU, I came across medications that I had never heard before. You know, some of these names aren't exactly, you know, I don't even know the word, look a bit intimidating. Like, the doctor would be prescribing it and it's like, okay, can you get this ready? So I'll just be tapping away at Medusa, getting the BNF, trying to figure out what is this medicine. I had to go away and study these new set of medications, but these medications became my new normal. Thankfully, we had a really good practice development nurse attached to ICU. Like, she's amazing. I have so much praise for her. And I said to her, like, sis, I am struggling to remember all of these medications. So she gave me like a whole list of medications that I needed to learn that was related to the unit. So I went home, I studied up on it, and then I felt a bit more confident as well, knowing what these were. You will definitely be exposed to a whole new word bank of medications when you enter ICU. And if anything, I think that's a positive thing, really. Out of all the placements and areas that I have worked in, I can hands down say ICU has been one of the best places that I've worked in terms of teamwork. The relationship between the doctors and the nurses in ICU is so positive. There is this different kind of working professional respect. There was not ever a moment that when I was concerned about my patient, I had to kind of convince a doctor to come and see them. It was always like, I'm concerned about my patient, and you know, with a bit of background, they would be there. And I think that is so important, and that was really different to perhaps working on the wards, where sometimes you don't really get that, and that's just me being really honest. In ICU, I felt there was a difference. Another thing also is the relationship between the nurses was also really refreshing. I could go to any nurse in the unit, senior nurse, a junior nurse, the matron, redeployed nurses, and there was never this attitude that, oh, I'm only looking after my patients, I can't come and help you. No, there was none of that. If a nurse hadn't gone on their break yet, but they still needed to do some medicines, it was like, okay, go for your break, I will do your medicines. So that's probably one of my favorite things about working in ICU. Teamwork is gold. Again, this is dependent on the unit. I was perhaps very fortunate to work in a unit where everyone was so warm and welcoming. You just don't feel this hierarchy in ICU. You know who everyone's roles are, but you were never made to feel like, oh, you're the junior staff member or you're redeployed nurse, so you don't know. None of that behavior. It was like, we're all here to care for our patients, so let's just all collectively help. How lovely is that, right? I want to share with you guys a story. I was allocated to look after a patient. They were doing quite poorly, so it was going over my break time. I hadn't gone for my morning break, and it was coming up near enough 12 o'clock, which isn't good. And that was the same with all the nurses in the bay that I was working in. We were all kind of struggling a bit. So unexpectedly, the matron walks in, full PPE, and comes over to me and says, right, hand over your patient and go straight to break. You're here to take over my patient? Matron, this is my manager's manager. She is the top woman when it comes to ICU. There she was, coming onto the floor, bedside nursing, something that she did 20 years ago. Very experienced, but still coming over and taking over the care so that her staff members can go on breaks. And I did question, I was like, are you sure? And she said, of course, we're all nurses here after all. I handed over the patient, and let me tell you, I was very nervous handing over the patient to her. Another thing that she did was she introduced herself to the patient, and she introduced herself saying, hello, my name is such and such, I'm the nurse looking after you. She did not say that she is the matron, the band-aid. It was as simple as that. She is the nurse looking after the patient. So I think I learned a very valuable lesson there. That's what I want to share with you guys as well, that at the end of the day, no matter what our titles are, no matter what years of experience that we have and so on. We are still nurses. That is who we are, regardless of any other titles attached to it. ICU really is a special place. It's challenging, very challenging, particularly with the circumstances that we have faced in the past year. But working in ICU, I really have matured as a nurse. The skills that you do learn in ICU are amazing. I think if you do wish to develop your nursing skills, gain some ICU experience. If you are considering ever working there, or if you've got a placement there, be prepared, because you are going to learn a lot, and that's only a positive thing. If you want to know more about life in ICU, then you're in luck. I have made a couple of fabulous vlogs for you guys detailing my life as a redeployed ICU nurse, and I even made a reflective, quite a chatty video about how I felt my first redeployment was. If you've got any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I will see you in my next video. Take care and stay safe.